I want to open the panel discussion now, and there is an interesting question in the chat from Philipp Czajkna. He's from Innsbruck, I know him. He's also a spin-off founder. He says, great founding stories. Question, can the founders elaborate on their experiences regarding the connection to the respective university after spinning off?
Who has some insights on that? Who wants to take the question?
Yeah, I can start here. I'm still at the university, so our case is probably very much special. The two other co-founders, they moved completely out, gradually moved out, and since then we still had the opportunity to have lots of joint projects from various funding schemes. Like FFG, for example, and also most recently the Athena Christian Doppler Laboratory. But this is very special to Bitmove, and I'm not sure this is applicable to any other company, which is also has had some hurdles to overcome to get these kind of fundings, but the cooperation with the institute here, where I'm currently still located, is very good, and also with respect to the technical faculty here in Klagenfurt, is still a very good connection and collaboration, which really helps to first do the research on our space, and then also with the correct funding and the projects being set up, enables us to do the technology transfer towards the company, hopefully for new products or making existing products better. But that's a different story, so maybe we have time sometime else to discuss this.
You have been thankfully answering the questions in the chat already to Karin and to the professor that was asking you the question. So I would like to refer to that if you want the answers to questions that were put half an hour ago. Maybe one question to the last presentation, Tom, I think to you. Helga is asking, who is the owner of this infrastructure that you were explaining?
Okay, so in this specific case of Wien Energie, it's right now still Wien Energie in parts. At least 50% of the projects are already migrated to the Energy Web Foundation chain. So this means there's a network, which is a DAO, a classical DAO. So it's not owned by anybody concerning contemporary ownership rules. Yeah. So, and long term, the whole infrastructure and the whole project has to move to the network overall. Yeah. So the moment you have individual beneficiaries, these projects are very complicated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for legal reasons, for regulatory reasons, for tax reasons, but also for, I would say, purpose reasons. Yeah? So if you say there is a network and the network has a certain value, this is a contradiction to this network is owned by an individual company. Yeah? So the more the network is depersonified, the more successful it might be, because it creates equal terms for everybody participating.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one question to Chiara from Alireza. I'd like to know about the challenges that you had at the beginning, especially regarding getting funds. What steps did you follow to write your business plan to apply for funding? Do you have any experience that you could share with us on that?
Yeah, so I should say that we got very lucky. So all our grants application got successful at the end. I should admit that we had a lot of training and preparations during our PhD, since my co-founder and me did a lot of paper writing and thesis writing. This helps a lot to create a full project from the scratch to the end, and have a full overview, which then it can be understood also from external persons. And as a recommendation, I always say, try as much as you can to apply to different funding agencies everywhere at the European level as well. And even if it's competitive at the end and it's not successful, at the end you get a lot of feedback that helps to reshape afterwards the next application.
Great. Maybe I have another question for Jama. Where is Symptoma used? Katrin is asking, is it already used at Austrian hospitals or at physician offices?
Yes, it has been used in dozens of hospitals and also doctor offices in Europe and abroad. For instance, we detect pattern for rare diseases by analyzing the electronic health records, or we have been used in waiting rooms in Austria, in France, and in Italy to help onboarding a patient and then helping the doctor with the second consultation, with the second opinion.
Mm-hmm. There is another interesting question in the chat from Clemens Danler. What role do universities play in the startup ecosystem in Austria, in your opinion? Do they only provide formal education and infrastructure, or should they also actively promote startups? If yes, how? I would invite every one of you to make a short statement. Chiara.
Yes, okay, I can start. Yes, so from my perspective, so universities should help a little bit more to understand what is actually available, which kind of path you have outside academia. So there should be a little bit more promotion and trainings on that, and to really expand the knowledge of students to something which is larger than only highly focused research and only focus on a certain subject.
Great. Anyone else to second that, to add on something, to agree, disagree?
I think if founding a company, you can't really learn in a university. It's like trying to learn driving a car without ever having driven a car. So what a university can do and is to actually get back the alumni that were successful in founding a company out of the research which is relevant to the university's curriculum, and to inspire the students there and let them learn from the mistakes and from the successes of the alumni. I think this is probably one of the core tasks for universities. And I think especially in Europe, the excellency of a university should not only be judged by the research output, but also by the impact on society. And the impact, to measure the impact, you probably need to measure the revenues of any company founded based on the teachings of a university or research of a university. Great. Anything to add?
Yes, I would say this challenge is not the challenge of the universities. Yes, it's a challenge for society. The problem is we practically don't have any kind of generic finance education, at least in Austria. And that's a big problem. Yes, you might learn it from your parents if you have entrepreneurs. Yeah? But normally you are not exposed to this. So the university cannot solve this issue. What we have to solve as a society is to educate kids way earlier in financial issues, especially because everybody becomes more or less an investor or entrepreneur one way or the other in a world where everything is a market. Yeah? And if we ask to solve this at the university level, it's already way too late.
Mm-hmm. This has been a question a couple of times. So in case any of you has a specific learnings on that topic, I'd like to ask you, how do you protect your intellectual property? Do you have any specific learnings to that question? Or should we just refer to Jama? Yeah.
Submitting patents as aggressively as you can, and otherwise by secrecy, and otherwise you can also generate an edge by proprietary data. One example is you technically could rebuild Google, but they are sitting on masses of user data. So they know the search behavior, and this is what's making the technology better. So if you do not have access to proprietary data, then you're toast. Even Microsoft couldn't close that gap then.
Perfect. Christian was nodding, so to say. You
Yes.
agree with that? Okay.
Yes, patents, that's the same. That's the same we do, but mainly from a defense perspective. So there are two ways patents could work. So one is like securing your IPR, and the other aspect is that trying to license the stuff to others. I think from a founding perspective, maybe the latter should be done first, and later on, if your business evolves into licensing, then maybe this will become an option.
Maybe one question to you, Christian, from my side. Are you more in academia, or are you more involved in Bitmoving as an operative part?
Me personally,
Yeah, you personally.
I'm fully in academia, and now running this Christian Doppler laboratory, which of course is connected to Bitmoving. So I'm in constant exchange with them. So just before the keynote, I had a meeting with them about some new topics that you will hopefully see then at NAB next year in April.
Perfect. Just a quick question to Chiara. Giulio is asking, if everything goes well, how long could it take to the market approximately in your case, if it's not confidential?
No, it's not confidential. So we expect the first licensing agreement to happen in 2 years. And then from there, the path of really bringing the product to the market, it's another 2 or 3 years, which is standard for having a mass manufacturable line at the partners location, and really manufacture it for the big consumer market.
Okay. Maybe Thomas, to you one quick question. Christina is asking, thank you for a great talk, a great idea to involve micro investors in big industries like power production. How do you reach out to micro investors, and how do you reach and engage them? Do you have any advice on that?
Yes, I have to say this is a very smart question, because the on-ramp and off-ramp into this new world is very tricky. So if you have a token, normally you go to an exchange, right? And when you go to the exchange, I would say this is already very centralized and problematic onboarding process. So in the case of WinEnergie, it's very easy, because they have an excellent backend system for billing, payment, settlements, and we could use their marketing department and their infrastructure. Yes. Overall, I have to say, meanwhile, within the next 3 to 5 years, you will not need this institutional setup anymore, because the blockchain space is becoming so sophisticated that there will be services you can simply run on your mobile phone, which will be served by whoever, and you will have access to this kind of services. I also wanted to say, patents are, in a token economy, prohibitive. Yes, you should not long too much for patents, because you have to open to find cooperators, and you have to share the deepest knowledge possible about your technology, so that you can convince others to work on it and to further develop it. So I don't say this is right for everything, but the world became way more complicated, and there is quite often not the clear black and white answer possible anymore.
And it's maybe a good discussion for next year or some other panel, since, for example, Elon Musk also opened up the Tesla patents in order for everybody to profit from the technology. It's a question, I think, that maybe different parts of the world would perceive differently, but it's super important and interesting to talk about.
There are many more questions in the chat, but if you want to have a break at midday for at least 15 minutes, I fear we need to move on to the video.
And close the round.
Okay,
exactly. Maybe guys, you have time to just check the chat as well. There are a few questions that we couldn't take. What were your motivations, and do universities have enough infrastructure and sandboxing and so on and so forth? Super important questions, but we have to move on with the program. And thank you so much for your insights and inputs on that question.